Axcient's in the news again. Cloudberry Lab and SKOUT change names. A+ opportunities in K-12 education. Mastering the secrets of hypergrowth. 6 ways vendors can help with marketing and much more. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 114, The Channel Buffet. Hello, everyone. Welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 114. My name is Mehmet Locke, technology editor, online director, and host of this fine audio program and video program for you. And who do I mean by you? The VARs, the integrators, the IT resellers of the world. You are you, and I hope you know who you are. But you know who also knows who you are is the man of the hour, the person rocking the black shirt and the bookcases and all this good stuff, executive editor, Rich Freeman.
I know who you are. I'm working on who I am.
So, you might want to go down to the Social Security office. They might be able to help you with that.
Okay. Yeah.
So, Rich, what are you up to? I know you're home right now, I can tell. But you're going back on the road again soon, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So this week I'm home here in Seattle. Next week, matter of fact, I don't even know if we've discussed this before, but I'm right in your backyard next week in the Chicago area.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So Tech Data has a show going on downtown Chicago, somewhere near the Loop, most of the week. And then I go straight from there to a D&H conference in Lincolnshire, whatever.
Lincolnshire, yep.
Which is, I guess, in the wrong direction from you, but
yeah.
Out in that general vicinity.
Yeah, very cool. You might have to run out to the old rural area if you have time, although usually you're pretty busy at these things.
Yeah, unfortunately. And there's something I need to be back home for in Seattle on Friday morning or afternoon, rather. Otherwise, I would have thought about maybe stretching the trip out a day or so and visiting with you folks.
Well, next time I'm sure you'll head to this neighborhood sooner or later again. So yeah, anytime you can stretch a trip, you're always welcome. Always welcome to come and hang out.
Well, thank you.
So rather than come up with all of our personal plans here on the show, we should probably, talk about things that people are actually interested in. So we don't have a long time for a show, so we're going to kind of do ChannelPro Weekly Rapid Fire Edition. But we got about an hour?
Yeah.
So we can take our time and go through at a nice pace, but not too leisurely. So why don't we go ahead and dive into some of the stories that we have this week? So Axcient is in the news. I always laugh every time I see this word in conjunction with storage because it never lasts. Axcient unveils unlimited backup storage, faster RTOs, and other stuff. That sounds exciting. What's going on with Axcient?
Folks who listened to last week's episode and remember that there was a story we talked about regarding PAX 8, and there were 3 different things that they announced that didn't really tie together to one another, but the unifying theme was customer experience and customer satisfaction. Sort of a similar thing with Axcient this week. They announced 3 different things. They're not on the surface connected to one another, but they all kind of scroll up to this priority that they've been placing for a long time now on customer experience. So as you have just indicated, the first of those is they have a new storage model, pricing model for their BDR service, which is Replibit, based on the Replibit technology that Axcient and its forerunners acquired a long time ago. And the service now comes with unlimited storage and unlimited retention, no time limit on the retention. In addition, they have narrowed down a whole bunch of different SKUs. I forget how many they had for a while there, down to 4. And the common theme there, just with respect to this unlimited storage and retention policy now, is simplifying things for partners. This is how, or one of the ways that they're looking to drive increased partner satisfaction is to make doing business with Axcient easier. So a whole lot fewer SKUs to understand and juggle all the way across their portfolio, BDR and beyond. And you don't have to think about different storage tiers anymore and decide if you want the 3 terabyte or the 10 terabyte or whatever. It's all one tier now, basically, and it's all unlimited. Also, a crowd pleaser, if customer experience is what you're after, they have made some upgrades to the underlying technology behind the BDR system that significantly increases the performance of the system. So in the past, they say, this is their version of things, partners were always happy with the Replit platform in terms of what it could do around recovery point objectives, but recovery time objectives could be kind of an issue. And they feel like they've corrected that now with this new technology they put in place that in a test environment at least can spin up a replacement environment in the cloud within milliseconds. Could take you a little bit longer than that in production circumstances, but they're saying, in no more than minutes, certainly you're completely spun up, and that is a significant improvement over what they used to do. And then you can run the Replit solution either on your own hardware or on appliances that you get from Axcient drives, which wasn't the case before. So you can now add or swap out drives without having to bring the system down. And again, it's just something that partners have been asking for and like to see in an appliance like this.
Yeah, it looks nice and small for the appliance part of it. So it seems like every single time we see a file sync and share or storage service that touts unlimited storage, that never really seems to last. Do you think, how long do you think it'll be until they actually start to put some limits on this? Because that's untenable, right? Unlimited storage with unlimited retention is untenable.
You would think. If they succeed in attracting enough partners and those partners succeed in attracting enough end users, it would be difficult to do unlimited forever. So I don't know. I don't know how long it lasts, but they are dead set on this whole ease of doing business, simplicity kind of theme, and so the logic from that perspective of doing this is pretty clear. Yeah, we'll just have to see how viable or how long it remains viable.
Yeah, because if you remember, OneDrive for Business used to be unlimited storage a long time ago, and then Microsoft had to pull that back and actually start putting limits. Although I guess they do still technically have an unlimited option, but you have to email them, if I remember correctly, if you actually need more than, I think 5 terabytes is the most that you can get through the dashboard. But yeah, it just seems like that's just not something that works over the long haul, because you not only does that, if it's unlimited retention, it never goes away, right?
Yeah.
Whoever deletes anything anymore, right? So it just constantly grows, and you have to back it up, and you have to replicate it. So it just seems like that's not going to work. But hey, it might work. It might work in attracting some business in the short term. But if you're out there, folks, I'm sure Axcient believes they can do that. But don't be surprised if you join this, and dive in headfirst into this, and realize someday that they're going to take that away. Maybe they'll grandfather people in.
Yeah. And in some ways, I imagine they might point out that the comparison to OneDrive isn't really a fair one if you just think about the scale of the user base that OneDrive supports, as opposed to, and I don't know how many devices they protect over at Axcient. So, that, from their standpoint, that might make it a little bit more realistic. They just don't back up nearly as many devices as a Microsoft does. But yeah, unlimited forever is not an easy thing to do. So
maybe I misheard. Is the unlimited backup part of their new file sync and share that they're offering, or is it the unlimited device backup?
It's BDR, the BDR platform, not the file sync and share.
Oh, okay.
Check that. So that's what they announced in this news story. But their file sync and share system and their cloud-to-cloud backup system already offer unlimited storage. So actually, all 3 of those systems are now consistent in that regard. All you can eat.
There's nothing like going to the buffet, data storage buffet. But I have to imagine they're going to put some reasonable restrictions in place. Just because you always get the guy that goes to the buffet who's like a professional eater, right? And can chomp down 8 million shrimp and crab legs, and then put the buffet out of business.
Ruins it for everybody.
There's always the guy, the professional eater guy. But did I read a story like somebody die from an eating competition over this last week? Something about like a taco eating competition or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about as much as I know about it. I saw the headline, but yeah, you're right. Somebody ate themselves to death at a taco eating competition.
Gosh, fortunately, it seems like that would never happen if you use too much data storage. I don't think if you use too much, I don't think your life is at risk. But let this be a warning. There is a limit to the number of tacos a human being can consume. So, and Rich, I know you love tacos.
I do.
Particularly on Tuesdays.
Taco Tuesday, my favorite day of the week.
You didn't have tacos today because it's Thursday today. So is it Burrito Thursday, or what's the Thursday cuisine?
Quesadilla Thursday.
Quesadilla Thursday. Swedish meatballs. You were over at IKEA, weren't you? Good times. All right. Well, cool. It sounds like all good changes if you're using Axcient, and it looks like they've got a nice, compelling offering to attract some more partners. So.
And they've got more stuff coming. They already kind of indicated that when the ConnectWise IT Nation event rolls around end of October, they're going to have something to announce with regards to a sort of a unified management portal for all the different solutions that they offer. And we talked last week about their new marketing portal. So
yeah, the marketing portal. Yeah, they did. That was just last week they did that.
Exactly. So these guys are really, really busy right now bringing to life this strategy that David Bennett, their CEO since early this year, has really embraced this idea of simplifying and satisfying partners and ease of doing business, et cetera. And there's a lot going on. I think that's going to remain the case for a while.
Nothing satisfies more like unlimited data.
Yeah.
Good time. Well, so while Axcient is not taking the slow and steady approach right now by having all kinds of crazy announcements week after week, Harmony and ServiceTree, however, are taking a slow and steady approach to the PSA market. Isn't that true?
This is true. And you were, in fact, alluding to an article that went up. So last week I was at the CompTIA ChannelCon event. We talked about that in our previous episode. But I had so many meetings with so many interesting vendors at that show. I wasn't able to get all the coverage up until after I had gotten home from that show. And so this story we're talking about now is derived from some conversations I had with two vendors at ChannelCon. Harmony PSA and ServiceTree. They are both PSA companies. ServiceTree actually is more of a managed services suite or platform maker. They have RMM, PSA, CRM, a whole bunch of different functions in their platform. But they're both relative newcomers to the market. Harmony has actually been around for a couple of years. Sort of perfecting the technology, getting themselves ready for a ramp up. Same thing on the ServiceTree side. And the theme of the article I wrote basically was right now, both of these companies have a relatively small number of partners, which they are perfectly willing to confess. And this is by design. They each in their own way kind of want to shake things out a little bit, make sure they've got the processes in place, make sure the back-end tools are ready to scale, et cetera, before they go big. And Harmony, I think, is pretty close at this point to feeling like it's ready to really make a push into the managed services market with their platform. It could be a little bit longer on the ServiceTree side, but they certainly sound like they are making headway as well. And I mean, neither company, when I was talking with them, sounded anxious about the wait. They're both really determined to make sure everything is right before they start attracting MSPs in large numbers and running the risk of disappointing somebody. So two interesting products, and especially the ServiceTree one. We've probably spoken about ServiceTree's product on this podcast before. It's very intriguing to me because it makes more extensive use of artificial intelligence than a lot of the managed services suites out there. And it's really designed to automatically optimize your utilization of your techs. It's looking continually. First of all, it's tracking what they do continually. So you're not dependent on your techs actually recording their time. The system is recording their time for them. So it's always up to date. It's always accurate. And then the system is drawing on all that reporting data to measure the efficiency of techs against each other so that the system understands who is maybe best qualified to take on this ticket versus that ticket. It's making the assignments based on that analysis. And ServiceTree, the company that developed this is an MSP in Australia, and they saw a 40+% increase in labor efficiency when they began using the system because the system is so good at maximizing both efficiency and utilization. So very interesting product to me, but obviously they've got a steep hill to climb because name recognition is just about nil right now for ServiceTree, and they're going to be competing with very, very well-known companies like ConnectWise and Datto and Kaseya and SolarWinds that have very deep pockets. So they're really going to have to do a very impressive job of marketing the platform once they feel like they're ready to go out there and recruit in big numbers.
They should talk to Axcient because they have a new marketing portal.
This is true. This is true. Not to mention unlimited storage.
Yeah. Unlimited marketing, unlimited storage. Yeah, there's a lot of 300-pound gorillas in the PSA space, so they have a very, very steep hill to climb. But now, I will be honest, I don't know oodles about all of the features directly about a lot of the other PSAs. Is ServiceTree the only one that kind of has this smart AI auto assignment kind of stuff, or how do the other ones work or compare to that?
So they're not the only platform using artificial intelligence. I, at least, am not familiar with another product that uses AI in quite the way that ServiceTree does. The ServiceTree product reminds me a lot of a product from BitTitan called MSP Complete. And you might even remember that. We've been talking about that product on and off again. And the idea with MSP Complete is there is a best way, a most efficient way to perform any process, and you capture that step by step in the tool, and then the tool makes sure that your techs follow that procedure. If you've got to stand up a new email server or Office 365 account or whatever for a customer, there is a right way, a best way to do it, and MSP Complete is going to step the technicians through that process and make sure that they follow best practices. But if you ask BitTitan, is this an RMM tool? Is this a PSA tool? They say absolutely not. It's an automation and orchestration platform that you use alongside your RMM and PSA. And the ServiceTree product is, in fact, a PSA automation tool. So it's a lot as if they took that same concept, driving MSP Complete, but actually turned it into a RMM PSA platform that managed service provider can use. And I'm not really aware, part of why I was so interested in the MSP Complete product is because it's unique as far as I can tell. And I'm just not aware of an RMM PSA tool that uses AI in quite this way, the way ServiceTree does.
And it's got a good brand name, MSP Complete. It seems like if you're not using it, you're not complete.
There you go.
And who doesn't want to be complete?
Yeah. Big mistake.
It is a big mistake. Okay, that sounds cool. I mean, I wish them luck, and I know we're going to be watching this product as they go. Are they not actively pushing it very hard? Is it still kind of like in a beta stage? What's their standing right now in terms of how aggressive they're trying to get this going?
Yeah, I mean, they're not aggressive at all right now. Now, they're not in a beta stage, either one of them, but, these are production systems. And, they were both exhibiting at ChannelCon last week, so they're not hiding from the channel. They're certainly trying to get the name out. But, like the headline says, they're taking a slow and steady kind of approach. They're bringing MSPs on slowly, keeping the numbers relatively low, and then just making sure that they've got everything in place to attract more MSPs over time.
Yeah, word of mouth thing for the time being, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a solid approach that has been done for many, many years in all kinds of businesses. So very cool. Speaking of, and you're right, it is a new name out there, and there are new names that signal new ambitions.
Indeed.
At least that's what the next headline says. So I wonder if this whole new name thing is all mixed together.
Yeah. Well, so here's another story that comes out of ChannelCon and conversations I had with vendors over there. This one concerns two different vendors in two different fields, really, that have recently embraced a name change or introduced a name change. And it's more than rebranding in both of these cases. So I'll start with the company that a lot of our listeners and viewers probably still know as Cloudberry Lab. So Cloudberry is a BDR vendor, fairly popular on the channel. They've got something like 7,000 or 8,000 partners today. They integrate. Go ahead.
It's bigger than I thought.
Yeah, well, me too. Yeah, I was surprised actually by that number. They quite popular among MSPs. They have recently adopted a new name though, so they are no longer Cloudberry Lab. They are now MSP 360. And there are really two reasons for the name change that are both encapsulated in the name. So first of all, they were very eager to make sure that people understood they are really focused on the MSP market. They didn't start there. I didn't know actually very much about the history of the company until last week, but the very first products that they introduced were administrative tools for Amazon's S3 service. So they didn't really start, and then after that, they had a sort of standalone backup product, and that began with Amazon. They extended it out to other platforms. Eventually, they added a multi-tenant version and started targeting MSPs as well. Now they're really all about the MSP, and that's why they put MSP in the name. But the other part of the name is the 360 part, and that's the really interesting part of the name change, which is just that they are looking beyond BDR. So here we are in this era of growing managed services suites from companies like ConnectWise and Datto and SolarWinds and Kaseya, et cetera. MSP 360, loosely speaking, now has ambitions in that direction as well. Now, they are not talking, if they have definite plans in terms of where they go next beyond BDR, they're not really talking about that. What they are willing to say is that they're talking to their partners. They're looking for opportunities to expand the platform. But the reason it is now MSP 360, in addition to the fact that it signals they're all about MSPs, is that they want to be all things to those MSPs. And so it'll just be an intriguing story to follow and see where they take that. Supposedly, we will begin to get a look at what that strategy looks like early-ish in 2020. So work in progress now, and more to come from those folks.
What do you think of the new name?
MSP 360. I kind of like it.
I think we're gonna pretty soon have to add 360 to the no marketing list.
See, now they probably thought they had figured out a way around the whole, your irritation factor. They did not include one. It could have been MSP 1.
It could have been MSP 1, so I will give them credit for that. But we've had the Xbox 360, we've had Moz 360. There's been a lot of other 360s. I wonder if I don't know if it's overused yet, so they might have just snuck in.
Yeah,
the 360 banning, but it's not my favorite. I kind of like Cloudberry. Cloudberry's weird. It's not BlackBerry. It kind of says cloud. It has the word berry, and berries are delicious. You often see them at buffets. Although nobody really eats the berries at buffets. Do you eat the berries when you go to a buffet?
I guess not. Well, breakfast buffet.
Breakfast buffet, you might have the berries. Or do you go for the pineapple?
No. Given the choice, I'm all about the berries.
You're all about the berries. Yeah. Interesting. So I don't know. I kind of like Cloudberry Lab. It was very unique and very recognizable and interesting. But MSP 360 is okay. I don't know. How many more 360 companies do we allow before we start shunning the word 360?
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't hit my fatigue factor on that yet, just in terms of the companies I'm writing about. But I mean, for me, that's probably where I I start objecting. Is where it's like, do I have to type 360 again? About some other company. Haven't gotten there yet, but yeah, could happen.
Could happen. Vendor marketing departments, be warned. 360 is on the docket. Pretty soon, the guillotine might come down, and there's another one that's on the ban list. Like the word one.
You will be pleased to know that the other company in this article did not utilize either one or 360 in their name.
And I'm already more pleased. So tell me about SKOUT.
So SKOUT, up until recently, was officially known as SKOUT Secure Intelligence. This is a cybersecurity company, email protection, endpoint protection, security operations center. So a multifaceted platform that they're offering.
And it was SKOUT with a K.
SKOUT with a K, indeed. Now, they have been historically, up until now, they've been focused on enterprise customers, and they've sold direct mostly to those enterprise customers. They are in the midst. So on June 10th, they officially rolled out a new name. Instead of SKOUT Secure Intelligence, they're now just SKOUT Cybersecurity. And that is part of a much, much bigger strategic shift for them. They are walking away from that enterprise business and the direct sales model and really going all in on MSP, sort of like MSP 360. And a channel-led, a channel-first sales model. So very, very new go-to-market for them, a very new target market for them. And it's all pretty much brand new, about 2 months old, that strategy right now.
Well, if you're going to go after small and medium businesses, I mean, doing that direct is practically impossible. You have to embrace a channel-first model. Unless you're going to grow your sales team just beyond ridiculous proportions and try to support it, which no one in their mind would want to do. So that's great. That's great. Good news for the channel that it's another opportunity. I don't think the name shift is all that dramatic. I like SKOUT Cybersecurity. I like the secure intelligence. The intelligence is a good word. It makes you think smart. But cybersecurity is definitely like what people are looking for. So I think that makes sense. I give this name a thumbs up, Rich.
What was that?
I said I give this name a thumbs up.
A thumbs up to the SKOUT folks. You know what? At the end of the day, I think you're right. Everyone's just going to call them SKOUT anyway. So secure intelligence versus cybersecurity, it probably doesn't have that big a difference. But I strongly predict that people in our audience who are not familiar with SKOUT today will be significantly more familiar with them, say, 12 months from now, because SKOUT is really about to make a serious effort to get the name out in front of MSPs and start signing up MSPs. So if you are a managed service provider, expect to see SKOUT around at the conferences you go to hear from them. I think they're going to be pretty aggressive about recruitment right now.
And so for those not familiar with them, and I'll be honest, other than the name, I'm not really familiar all that much with them. What is their offering? Who do they stack up against? How do you know how they're kind of pricing this? Do they have a program? What do they got? Are they still kind of working all this out?
They are working a lot of that out. So in terms of a program, there is a partner program in place, but they will tell you that it's pretty new. So it's all one tier right now, for example, and at some point down the road, they'll introduce different membership levels and a graduated benefit structure, et cetera. They've got a program in place right now, but it's a very new one. Pricing does sort of factor into their strategy. And then I'm looking at the article here to see how specific they were with me about that. I guess not terribly so. So everything is subscription-based, as you would expect for a company that goes after MSPs, based on the number of seats. And they, again, without getting into specific prices, they believe that the price points are a competitive advantage for them against some of the more established companies that they're competing with. And that, is something that, at least initially, something they're kind of going to need. One thing I will say is I'm still very new to their products and new to the platform. So I can't really speak with any kind of authority from a a features standpoint, what might differentiate their systems from others in the endpoint security space, and what might make their security operations center better than somebody else's, for example. So that is one reason, and until they can get really crisp about what those differentiators are, I think, price is going to be something that they're going to need to utilize just to get people interested in trying them out, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll learn a lot more about them as they roll their program out and start to hook MSPs into selling it. So we'll just keep our eyes open.
All right.
Indeed. So, well, that's kind of the news. So we're going to dive in here quick to some of their other stories. We're on track for time, which is unusual for us, yes. As we talk about berries and buffets on a regular basis. Well, it's important to talk about that kind of stuff, Rich. We got to get into the minds of people who attend buffets in the channel buffet.
Yeah, the channel buffet. No, I think we can safely say the thing that our listeners most want to know about us is, berries or pineapple. So we have settled that issue.
That's right.
Actually, we haven't. You know my preference. I don't know yours. So.
I think at the breakfast buffet, I'm going for the pineapple.
Interesting.
I do I like berries, but certain kinds of berries, like strawberries. But the pineapple's a winner every time, as long as it's not like soft and mushy. It's gonna be like good, freshly cut pineapple. But that's why are we talking about this? Okay. Also, speaking of other stories, we should also let everybody know that the ChannelPro SMB All-Stars are coming up. In fact, you and I have a meeting. We've had this date coming for a long time. We're meeting tomorrow. We're going to start hashing it out and yelling at each other and beating each other up and trying to convince each other why our picks should be the All-Stars.
The two of us and our colleague, Colleen Fry, ChannelPro's managing editor. Yep, we've got time on the calendar tomorrow to nail that list down. So that will be a very fun conversation. I always look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be great. It's always great having Colleen on, but she's not very heated as you and I are. Like we are like fisticuffs going after going down to this kind of stuff. So.
Well, not quite that. I don't know, but I mean, and the issue, so. And we've spoken about this before, but we have the Reader's Choice Awards at ChannelPro. That's where our listeners vote on their favorites in 50 different categories. The All-Star Awards is where the editorial team at ChannelPro kind of picks the companies we think have really done something important in the channel within the last 12 months or so. And I don't think, Matt, we ever officially made this a policy, but de facto, the vote has to be unanimous, basically. I mean, all three of us have to agree that that company belongs on the list for the company to get there. And so what happens is, I will draw up my own little personal list before this meeting. And the first name on the list in my mind is just like a no-brainer, slam dunk. This company belongs on the all-star list. And I'll bring it up and explain why. And Matt will say, and this is where it begins to get a little bit heated. It's like, what are you talking about? This is an absolute lock, and here's why. You've got and I've got to like make the case, because if the vote isn't unanimous, they don't make the list, and I'm just pulling hair out. And so that's what goes on in this meeting. And
there's two things that, of course, people who know me understand. Like, one, I do make everybody make a case, right? Because you got to be able to explain it. But two, I also often play devil's advocate just to drive you crazy.
So easy to do. Yeah, I know. I just take that bait every time.
but that's what makes it a coveted award. So for those a little bit unfamiliar, and we're going to dive into our other stories here in a second. But the SME All Stars, as Rich said, is when the editorial staff makes a choice based on something significant to the channel, as you said, in the last 12 months. So there has to be something specific we can point to, not just say like, we want to make HP an all-star because HP is a great company. I mean, because they are, but then we'd have 1,000 all-stars if that was our criteria. So it's got to be something in the last 12 months, and it has to be something that we believe significantly impacted the channel. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be a program change, it could be, the criteria are vast and wide, but we got to be able to make a case for why. Now, we also do solicit our readers to nominate all-stars.
Yeah.
I believe that form might be closed now because we're making our picks now. But for next year, we'll give everybody ample time. And actually, I don't know why we just don't leave that form open all year, because it's easier to when something happens, you think, wow, this is all-star material. It's easier to fill it out then than 6 months later. But we want you guys to send in your nominations. But we get a lot of nominations, but a lot of nominations read like, I choose ABC Corporation because ABC Corporation is nice. And it's like, okay, well, that's great. I'm glad they're nice. But we got to get a specific something that, like, because they released this product and my sales went up 350% and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like, that would be something that we would consider and think about and talk about. So we like to solicit feedback, but ultimately the buck stops with the three of us.
And we did, I'm obviously not going to name names, but we did get some good suggestions from readers this year that I believe at least a few of those we'll be talking about tomorrow. Yeah,
we did. And we also kind of have our panel of insider experts that we also solicit suggestions for, because there's so many companies in the channel. It's practically impossible to follow each and every thing that every company does. So we solicit some experts. Do you want to name names, or do you want to kind of keep that secret?
No, for time reasons, if nothing else, we
okay, right. But a pretty wide pool of channel insiders and experts that work with us frequently to make sure that we get a good, solid list of nominees to go through. And one of the other things I love about our All Stars is that we don't set a number. Right. It doesn't have to be 10. It doesn't have to be 100. It doesn't have to be 50. Like, we're not like stretching to meet some arbitrary goal. It's however many companies we believe met our criteria and get it. So we've had 19. I think it was 19 last year. We've had, I think 14 one year. We could have 34. It just depends on what these companies have been up to the last 12 months.
And I'll say, I think it might. I don't think we'll have 19 this year. I think it'll be a shorter list.
Ooh, so more coveted than ever. So, but it's good. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Get my picks out there, which Rich will beat down because he's mean to me. Kidding. I'm kidding. I can handle it. All right. We have the opportunity to talk about that tomorrow, and the opportunity to nominate All-Stars. But today there's A+ opportunities in K-12 education. And I know a lot about K-12 education because today was the first day of school for my kids. So there's a lot of kids and they go to school, and the schools have stuff. I bet there's opportunities there. Rich, tell me about them.
There really is. And those opportunities are expanding. So, we talk a lot about, in fact, it'll come up later in the podcast that specialization is a key to success and longevity in the channel these days. And vertical specialization is one really good way to pursue that. And the education market, if you're not there already, is a pretty good one to investigate. We have a story from our September issue that's available up on the ChannelProNetwork.com website now as well. It notes that according to data provided to us by Synex, the U.S. K-12 market was worth $14 billion last year. That number is growing. Number of different trends kind of driving that. A lot of them ultimately stem back from the fact that between Chromebooks and all of these sub $300 Windows-based laptops, this idea that's been floating around in the K-12 world for a long time of one device per student, this is actually becoming a practical, affordable reality now. And so you're seeing businesses invest more and more in computers of various kinds. And when they do that, they need networking, they need security, they often are looking for devices, these charging stations that they can store the laptops in and charge them up with. There is a huge trend in the direction of learning management systems and software-based instruction, and instead of chalkboards and stuff like that. So There's a whole application and software opportunity in the K through 12 space. So it's a pretty hot market actually right now, and one that I know the folks at D&H, who we quote in this story and who I'll be meeting with next week, are very interested in and see as a big opportunity for their resellers.
I can see lots of opportunity in education. I also been reading some very recent articles that might kind of go against some of those trends. I'm reading in some cases, some schools, how many? It could be now, this would be like one school out of 8 trillion, but it seems like some schools are trying to utilize computers and screens less in classrooms these days, given the amount of screen time that kids have on their own devices at home. So I wonder if over time, if there's this saturation of screen time, and there's been a lot of studies right now that screen time is not good for kids, and kids are spending too much time on screens and phones and tablets and all that kind of stuff, that schools might start to push back a little bit and be a place where they're not in front of screens and have more traditional educational approaches. What do you think? You think that might happen?
I think it could have. We spoke last week, I believe, on the last episode of the podcast about cloud repatriation, right? And this idea that there was this rush to get everything up into the cloud, and then some of those workloads have migrated back onto on-premises, and sometimes traditional client server hardware, sometimes private cloud, but a lot of workloads that were moved up into the public cloud are now coming back, because it turns out that in some cases that public cloud environment wasn't the best place for them to be. I could imagine a similar scenario in the education space, where there's this kind of rush into learning management systems and software-based instruction and so on and so forth, and then a bit of a backlash later when people realize maybe they were a little bit too aggressive about making that change. But I don't know. My sense of things, and again, I'm basing this on input that we received here at ChannelPro from people who are much, much better versed in this market, is that software and hard screens and all that's all very much in a pretty rapid growth phase right now in the K through 12 space. I don't think that demand is shrinking at this point, but it could happen.
It could happen. It might happen for a lot of the younger grades, because it seems like a lot of the studies I'm reading these days are, maybe middle school and under, elementary school, you want to limit screen time more. And as computing devices, smartphones, and that kind of stuff have become more ubiquitous in households of all income brackets, it seems like that's just something that is going to be more of an issue with young children going forward. So whether or not schools will go along with compounding that issue or not, but I could certainly see on the high school level a need to maintain all students having some kind of computing device, because it becomes much more important to their curriculum, I would think. But that's just my opinion.
And in a totally different kind of opportunity-related direction, the other thing going on in the education space now that we haven't actually spoken about is physical security systems. And that's
another big opportunity. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, huge right now. And I've spoken to a number of different partners who have K through 12 clients who have said enormous demand right now for that kind of system. Yes,
badges and smart locks and, to get into all the doors on campus I could see. Yeah, all kinds. I guess there's more opportunity than just the computing side.
Yeah.
There's probably also a lot on the administration side for education as well. Does that article touch on any of those opportunities?
It depends on what kind of administration you mean, but I don't be the short answer.
Okay. Well, very cool. Well, we'll just have to watch that space, but I know it's a lucrative space, and I'm sure certain parts of it will continue to grow, and certain parts may retract and then grow again. It's all, it's always hard to predict the future, because you're right. A good, 26.4% of the time? No.
And I'm pushing hard for 26 and a half.
that extra 0.1%, Rich, that's super important.
You got to have goals.
You do have to have goals. The mastering of fortune telling, and also mastering the secrets of hypergrowth.
Yeah. This is another article that appears in the latest issue of our monthly ChannelPro magazine. And it was actually inspired by, and what the heck, as long as we were plugging the All-Stars before, I'll plug our upcoming forum event in San Jose, which is September 5th in San Jose, events.channelpronetwork.com to learn more about it. But the last one of our live in-person events that we did was in Chicago. And I led a panel discussion on the first day, the pre-day officially of that event with some MSPs, several of whom were growing by like huge double digits a year. And it just sort of got me to thinking, what is it that the companies that are doing that, and not just, over the last 6 months, but for the last couple of years or so, what is it that they're doing maybe that the rest of us, or the other MSPs in our audience could be learning from? And so we did the story about mastering the art or the secrets of hypergrowth. There is a definition, a technical definition of hypergrowth put out by the World Economic Forum that we cite earlier on. If you're wondering, well, what does hypergrowth mean in the concept or a context of a business? It means a company that has a compound annual growth rate of more than 40% and has doubled revenues in 2 years or less. So compare that to how you're doing, and whether or not you are a hypergrowth MSP. But in terms of what, we went out, we talked to some of these hypergrowth MSPs. In terms of what they're doing, a lot of it comes down to standardization, specialization, and scalability, the big 3 S's, basically, that enable these companies to grow at this kind of a rate. And so we were just talking minutes ago about specialization, which could be vertical specialization, but really zeroing in on something that you're especially good at. It's going to give you a competitive edge. It's going to generate referrals for you. It's going to give you the ability to create things once and utilize them many times with many customers. Hypergrowth MSPs are very serious about standardization. They have one set of products. They don't support 6 different BDR platforms, for example. They have a standard set of solutions that they support, and they really minimize the variations in terms of what they're selling their customers. They've got an all-you-can-eat bundle, basically, that has security and BDR and management, et cetera, in it, and that's pretty much what they're looking for everybody to buy. And that's going to contribute, obviously, to efficiency, but it's also going to contribute to that third S, scalability. The more efficient you are, the more you can scale and grow rapidly. So those are some characteristics that we see in the hypergrowth MSPs. And then just another interesting observation that came up in the article is that companies, MSPs who are experiencing hypergrowth have a tendency to sell to end users in hypergrowth mode. You can basically follow along. If you are selling to companies that are growing very, very, very fast, they can kind of pull you along into hypergrowth as well, which I thought was sort of interesting. And then I guess the other thing worth pointing out is that these hypergrowth companies tend to spend more, I would say well above average, on sales and marketing, because they understand that you need to have a lead generation engine that is continually producing new leads, new customers. And so they will make the investment to hire a full-time salesperson or a CMO, for example. And that's a big part of their success formula too.
Wow, there's a lot of interesting questions that you can come up with when you're talking about hypergrowth. Now, the first question that came to my mind as you defined hypergrowth in the context of a business, how many other definitions of hypergrowth did you research when you were putting this together, or when we were talking about this? So what is the definition of hypergrowth as it relates to, say, foot boils? Or
I don't think the World Economic Forum has chimed in on that yet. Maybe the World Foot Forum has. I don't know. We can look into that.
Right, or tumor size. When is a tumor in hypergrowth? Or a ladder? Can a ladder be in hypergrowth? Maybe if you extend it really fast, a big extension ladder, then that could be hypergrowth.
Right. I don't know.
So that was just some crazy way that I was, my brain was going while we were talking about that. I'm like, I wonder how many different ways you can define hypergrowth about all kinds of interesting things. But this is interesting. My question to you, though, and you might know this, is hypergrowth always a good thing? Or is it something, it seems like something that could be also detrimental to an MSP getting pulled into like you said, you get a client and they're growing like crazy and you are now like kind of being pulled along. Could that be something that not all MSPs can handle?
Absolutely. And I mean, and it goes beyond MSPs, right? I mean, this is true for any startup, say. You can grow too fast. And this is why scalability is so important, is you really need to have the tools and the processes in place to accommodate hypergrowth before you start entering hypergrowth. Or you could, break the business essentially and, go from being a company that end users love doing business with because you provide great service, for example, to a company that is providing terrible service because you're just overwhelmed. So yeah, hypergrowth can be a problem for an MSP that's not prepared for it.
Yeah, I wonder how many businesses have gone down because of that. Because, as you said, you may not intend to kind of hit this cycle of rapid growth, but it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
and if you don't know how to deal with it, where could you go? Okay, so let's say I have my own MSP and I'm growing, and then something happened to my business, and now I'm just like growing like gangbusters, and I don't know what to do. Where do I go? What resources are out there? What would somebody like me do to help me through that process?
Well, I guess it depends on the resources that you're looking for, but there are outsourcers of various kinds. I mean, that's the first place my mind goes, essentially, is companies like Image IT, I think, who we've spoken about before. They just provide contract labor. We've spoken about how distributors can provide outsourced third-party assistance. So if you really kind of need some help keeping up with growth right now, those are some of the kinds of companies that you could look at. I have spoken to members of the 20. So the 20 is this managed services co-op that we've talked about before in the podcast, and I've written about before in the magazine a number of times now. I've spoken to companies that joined the 20 specifically because they were growing very, very fast, and they wanted to be part of a larger organization that would help them scale more easily. They wanted to have, other MSPs in their network, essentially, that they could outsource stuff to. So, I mean, a number of different models that you can go to, basically, to scale up your employee base, essentially, on a short-term basis in a relative hurry.
Yeah. Well, and of course, another good place to go, as always, for great business advice and help is ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. All kinds of great, fascinating content, including articles like this that talk about hypergrowth and other growth strategies. I'm sure we got lots of content about growth strategies and hiring and expanding your business and all that kind of stuff, right?
Very much so. Yep.
Treasure trove of it on there. Yeah. So we put links to all of these articles for every show in the show notes page on the website. So if you want to read any of these articles, go to the show notes page. If you're watching the video, like on YouTube or somewhere else, we try to put all of the links in the description area for the video, because we want to help you, and part of that is pointing you to the right resources to follow. And the way that vendors can help partners, we got 6 ways that vendors can help partners get better at what, Rich?
Well, get better at marketing. So this is a story that went up on ChannelProNetwork.com just yesterday, actually, as we record this. And this, too, actually goes back to ChannelCon. This is based on a conversation I had with Andra Hedden, who you know. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of Marketopia. Marketopia is a company founded by a former MSP, Andra's husband, Terry Hedden. and they specialize 100% in marketing services, outsourced marketing services for the SMB channel. But what's interesting about Marketopia is their client base includes both MSPs and vendors who serve MSPs. And so they're in this kind of unique position where they know both what the MSPs want and need with respect to marketing and what the vendors are delivering to MSPs with respect to marketing. And a good part of the conversation I had with Andra last week was about the gaps, the sort of communication breakdown between what the vendors think their partners need and what the partners actually need. And that's what this article was about. There were 6 different things that she sort of flagged for me that represent disconnects between where the real need is in the MSP community and what's going on with the partners, or the vendors rather, and what the vendors can do to kind of help with that. And, you know, just as a for example, we were talking before about the new marketing portal at Axcient. And that's a great thing. You know, it provides Axcient partners easier access to more resources and so on. But Andra pointed out, you know, every vendor these days, it seems, has a marketing portal. And if you are, as an MSP, are working with 30 different vendors, you've got 30 different portals to deal with. And so one of the things that she really advises vendors to do is keep that in mind and factor that into your design process. Make your portal really, really easy to use and something that an MSP can kind of get into fast, find what they need, get out fast, because otherwise they may not use it at all. It may not be as much use to them as you'd like it to be, because they just don't have time to master 30 different portals. Similar sort of thing with MDF, Market Development Fund programs. You know, first off, she pointed out a lot of vendors don't do a great job of publicizing the existence of MDF programs and the fact that you don't have to be some top tier member of their partner program to qualify for MDF. Quite often, almost any partner can qualify, but you know, the vendor is responsible for getting the word out about that, but also for simplifying the application process, making it easier for the partners to get a hold of that money. Now, when you do, if you're a vendor and you do hand out that money, vendors tend to think, according to Andra, in quarterly cycles. And they are very, very fixated these days in the era of pay-per-click marketing and social media marketing. They're very focused on tangible, immediate, measurable ROI, which makes perfect sense. Budget cycles work quarterly, and having ROI that you can really measure closely is something that makes perfect sense. But there are times when the smarter play from a marketing standpoint for a partner is to focus less on an individual marketing activity that is going to be done within 3 months and produce some measurable ROI, and more on a sort of multi-layered campaign, a number of different activities that will nurture a lead over time and build a relationship that over time is going to produce more revenue for the partner. And so she feels, and I think makes a compelling case for there being a problem. Essentially, vendors are pushing their partners sometimes in the direction of unwise marketing strategies that don't really allow them to think beyond the quarter and think beyond that immediate ROI result that they're delivering back from the partners. So she would encourage the vendors to think a little bit more broadly. Yeah, so there are more.
Another question I have too. From what I tend to hear a lot, especially at our events and hearing others talk about marketing, it seems that not a great number of MSPs do a lot of active marketing. Is that true?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. Yeah.
So marketing is kind of like this stigmatized thing, or a lot of MSPs don't see the value in it, or they don't get any return from it. Why don't more in the channel do active marketing?
So 2 things, and the smaller issue I think is there are a lot of MSPs out there who get as much new business as they feel they need through referrals or without regular marketing. But I think the bigger issue, it's not a question of not seeing value in it or there being a stigma attached to it. I think it's just not knowing how to do it. Andra pointed out there's sales and marketing content at pretty much any conference you go to, and those rooms are always packed. And in fact, at our forum events, we always have some sort of sales and marketing content built in there, because we know from years of experience that it tends to be very popular with our audience. People, they get into this line of work, they become an MSP, they become a VAR based on technical experience and know-how. And then they learn a lot of what it takes to run a business on the job, hiring and firing, et cetera. And that very much includes sales and marketing. They don't know how to do it, and they are hungry for advice and assistance with that. Yeah,
interesting. Okay. And then, and it's important. So if you're not doing a lot of marketing, vendors have a lot of options that you were talking about, like portals with pre-made materials, and sometimes you also said money.
Yep.
Free money, right?
Yeah.
To start actively marketing, and in those, and do MSPs like to market with vendor materials? Because it seems like they're kind of marketing the vendor and not their own business, or how do a lot of these programs work?
Well, that actually, interestingly enough, is another one of the gaps that Andra pointed out. I mean, what the MSPs most need really is help differentiating themselves from their competition, which means building their own brand. So one of the things that you will almost always hear a vendor talk about when they are rolling out a new marketing portal, Axcient included last week, is the availability of typically white labeled kinds of collateral, data sheets and white papers and case studies and so on. And typically the way it works is you can download whatever looks good and slap your logo on there, and either present it as coming from you, or more often coming from you in combination with the vendor. And so from an MSP standpoint, this is great stuff in that a lot of MSPs, especially the smaller ones, don't have the resources to produce this kind of stuff on their own. So to give this material to them and allow them to use it in marketing campaigns is very useful. But to the vendors tend to think about products, and to the extent that the stuff that the vendors are distributing is really about promoting the vendor's products, it's not necessarily helping the MSP with that bigger need, which is about building their own brand equity among SMB buyers.
Yeah, indeed. Well, cool. Very interesting article. I know we're starting to run up against the clock here, so we're going to have to cut our conversation there. But like I said, we put the links to all of these things that we're talking about in the show notes page at channelpronetwork.com at his website, or in the video description area. So go and check those articles out and read all about it, and get a handle on some of the ways that vendors can help partners do better marketing. Pretty neat stuff. Because we're running short on time, we're not going to do a museum pick or a tech pick this week. But Rich, if you'd like to take a brief moment and kind of tell us what has been and what you might see coming in the future, what would you see?
Well, every week you can find out what has been in our In Case You Missed It column, which is written by ChannelPro's own James Gaskin. Kind of a slow news week this week, but there are some stories he'll be writing about. There's an interesting security research study that he will have in his column this week that anyone who serves customers in the legal industry will be interested in taking a look at. There's some data points in there that should be useful from a sales and marketing standpoint. And then fresh on the heels of last week, in which James talked about the introduction of mustard-flavored ice cream, this week he's got a little bit about the introduction of pumpkin spice-flavored Spam. It's autumn, folks, and here comes the pumpkin spice craziness.
Pumpkin spice everything, man. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned mustard. I actually, just the other weekend, went to the National Mustard Museum.
Oh. I believe we've spoken about this before.
We might have spoken about this because I have been there before. I love that place. It's in Middleton, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. I got to sample all kinds of mustards. Not mustard ice cream, no. That's just weird. I can't do that. But they've got mustards from all over the world, and you get to sample any that you want. So, of course, I came home with a big box full of different mustards to put on my brats and my sandwiches and all that kind of stuff. So, little plug for the National Mustard Museum. Anyway, keep going. What else is coming up?
Well, in terms of what's coming up next week, I mentioned the Tech Data Partner Conference in Chicago and D&H's Midwest Technology Show, also in the Chicago area. So I will actually be at both of those. Our buddy Joel Zaidspinner, ChannelPro's associate editor, associate publisher, will be at the latest ASCII group event in Toronto. And that's going on next week, too.
Very cool. Lots to look forward to. So on that note, if you'd like to follow us on the socials, you can follow ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. You can go to we're ChannelPro Network on Facebook. The website, of course, is channelpronetwork.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the show, you can subscribe to the audio version on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or on Stitcher. Pretty much anywhere podcasts are aggregated, you should be able to find us. We also have a generic RSS link you can throw into any podcast reader of your choice. If you'd like the video version, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Just remember, on YouTube, you gotta hit the subscribe button, but that actually doesn't do anything anymore, I don't think, other than make a little bell appear. That's the one that you want to hit. You want to hit subscribe and then hit the bell, because then you get notified if we put new shows out, which is exactly what you want. So make sure you subscribe there. If you have friends, relatives, colleagues, anybody who's also a channel reseller or likes IT news and information, pets, whatever, please let them know about us, and that way you have something to talk about with them each and every week. Because it's getting harder and harder to find things to talk about with people, Rich, because everybody posts everything on social media.
It's true.
So save channel discussion for ChannelPro Weekly for your little water cooler meetings, and make new friends. Look, Rich, we're helping the world make new friends.
And not just us.
So that is going to wrap up episode 114. Thank you all for listening and watching. We will see you all next week.